This is Nila Devaney, who is the wizard behind the mural behind the Arch Street Meeting House. And she'll be telling us how we got the mural and the students who did it and all the process therein. Nila, it's yours.
Excellent. Yes, so my name is Nila, and I am a Philadelphia-based artist. I have been working with the mural company Amber Art and Design for about a little under 4 years now. Um, and Amber Art and Design is a community-based public art company here in Philly. And um, I was able to be the project lead here. It was my first time being a project lead, so it was actually a really exciting and emotional and profound experience for me as well. We had a really good team on the project. And yeah, today I will just tell you a little bit about why this project was important and, where it even came from, what the spark of it was. It actually has a really interesting origin. And I'll tell you a little bit about who was involved. So I'm going to share my screen here. And I need to go to present. Okay, so I titled the mural In the Palm of Your Hand. And that has a lot to do with this very specific moment in the mural where there is a seed growing out of somebody's hands. So someone's holding their hands out like this, and then from their hand is a sprout. And the theme of the mural ended up being a lot about intergenerational growth and about like things growing new from old places. So the concept of a sprout felt really important. So that's sort of where the title came from. It's behind the Arch Street Meeting House. For anyone I'm assuming everyone's very familiar, but Arch Street Meeting House is obviously, an incredibly sacred site. And it's a very ancient place. And I was working with Sean, who works for the Arch Street Meeting House, and he was working with grant money he had received to be doing work around social justice within the Arch Street community and generally within like Quaker community. And they were doing, he was working on several different projects at the time, but he had the idea of creating a mural on the back of this shipping container that's behind the meeting house. And it may just be a shipping container, but you can see it from all the windows of the meeting house. And, there was no way we were ever going to actually paint on the building, obviously, because it's extremely historic. So it was like, how can we create something new that's on this land and on this sacred site, but that doesn't actually, affect or damage the building at all? So this here is the shipping container we were working with. And it's pretty long. It's pretty big. And it's right in the parking lot. And the thing about the other side of the shipping container is that there's a little pathway there that links to, I guess, it might be Ben Franklin's house, maybe, or it links to other sort of like ancient property over there where they have been trying to restore that pathway. And they thought having an image there to sort of link Arch Street to like the rest of our old city would also be sort of meaningful. So those are some of the things that we were working with. And this is the mural. So this is a final product image. I'll go through, what the process was around this, but I'll tell you that the spark was essentially that they had received some grant money and were interested in doing work around protests that happened during the summer of 2020, talking and considering and reflecting on police brutality, on community resources, on ways in which the city of Philadelphia had failed its community, had served its community. Like they were sort of asking all these really, 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 really big questions and thinking a lot about like, what is, how can Arch Street Meeting House as a community hub utilize that to have these conversations, basically. And so what happened was that initially we were going to have these like conversations that were going to be really citywide, that would launch into like thinking about like legacy of Philadelphia, legacy of Arch Street. And we ended up, after some time of sort of like starting, with a really big net, sort of consolidating our idea into working with youth. And we decided to work with the Frankfurt Friends School. And we decided to work with 8th graders there. And we thought that that was sort of a pivotal, eighth grade is just a very pivotal moment, because you have people who are graduating and leaving a version of youth and entering into sort of another version of youth, but like thinking about legacy in a different way. And so we were like, okay, let's harness this demographic of youth and talk about these really big questions and sort of open up and see what collaboration could be there and what images could come out of that. Yes, so here are some close-ups of the mural. The mural is people gathering. It's people gathering together. It's supposed to feel like everyone is very familiar. So like, even if you do not recognize the faces that are here, that they symbolize something warm and familiar to you. And the idea and the concept here is that the people who are really like dark, like bright pigment, people here in the front, is sort of like a contemporary gathering. And then these ghostly figures who you might see in the back, like there's one hidden behind the tree here, and there's some ghostly figures over here you'll see. Those are all Quaker revolutionaries. And they're specific people. And we wanted to honor them as being the backdrop for, contemporary gathering, if that makes sense. So it was really about like, the whole mural was really about like, okay, we've got 8th graders, we've got 13-year-olds, we have youth, and we're bringing that bright, youthful energy to like one of the oldest, most spiritual sites in Philadelphia. Like, what's going to happen? What does that look like? And what is that intersection, between a really ancient place that is really rooted in tradition and legacy? And what does it mean to revitalize that as well? So we started, so here's a small statement about it. I said, this mural symbolizes the garden of intergenerational healing, both individually and as a community. With the guidance of ancestral revolutionary figures, this mural is both a prayer and a gesture of gratitude for our human ability to inspire one another in our cycles of growth. So just a little bit of background. Amber Art and Design is the mural company that created this. They were originally reached out to because these are my mentors, Kier and Linda, who I work for there. This Linda Fernandez and Kier Johnston. And Kier Johnston in the blue has Quaker family and has a relationship to the Quaker community, which is how he was initially reached out to. And he ended up, he collaborated with me on this project and guided me through it, and also ended up sort of passing the baton off to me in terms of the leadership. But he is the original link to the Quaker community and why he was reached out to. These are just some examples of some of Amber Art and Design's work. They do really beautiful, thoughtful projects in Philadelphia. Amber Art and Design's mission is really centered around working with community the entire process. So it's slow processes, it's thoughtful, it's really getting to know people and a community need, and, taking time to really be present in every step of the process. So they have done all kinds of murals throughout Philadelphia. These are just some examples. And then these are some examples of my painting work. So I do people gathering. I'm really interested in like public spaces. So like, for example, this here is a bus stop. I'm really interested in people gathering sort of accidentally, like a bus stop, like sort of unintentional gathering is really beautiful and interesting to me and feels like a really big part of living in Philadelphia. So a lot of my paintings are just people holding each other, intimacy happening in public spaces, community gathering. And I'm specifically interested in the concept of celebration and how celebration can be really complicated. And celebration oftentimes involves a lot of grief. Celebration oftentimes involves a lot of mourning. Celebration oftentimes involves sadness and other complexities. So I like to create nuanced celebration images. And I think that that's why Keir thought that I would be a good fit for this project, was because we were really thinking about celebration. Like, what does it mean to consider Philadelphia as a city, and like ways in which Philadelphia needs improvement, ways in which Philadelphia we want to honor what has been happening, like, just all of it at once. So yes, this project was a collaboration between Amber Art and Design, Frankfurt Friends School, and Art Street Meeting House. These were the questions that were sort of guiding the process. Looking back at our collective past, what can we learn from our successes and our failures as a city and as a community? How do we heal collectively? What are the obstacles towards greater community care? Can art be used as a communal tool for exploration in these kinds of conversations? Specifically, why murals and why public art? And what legacy do we want to leave? So these are really the central guiding questions. And what happened was that the first step of this process was that Sean from Art Street Meeting House came to Frankfurt Friends School and gave a presentation on sort of the history of Quakerism. A lot of these kids, because they went to a Quaker school, obviously knew a lot, but his approach was really graceful and I really admired it and learned a lot from it as well, because he talked to these kids about he talked to the kids about he held Quakerism accountable for parts of Quaker history that is racist, for people in Quaker history that are racist, for people in Quaker history that have been sexist, for parts of Quaker history that are important to acknowledge caused harm. Equally, he talked about parts in Quaker history that were healing, that were revolutionary, that changed the world, that changed Philadelphia, the extremely loving parts of Quakerism. And he just sort of opened it up and painted a really authentic portrait, and the kids really engaged with it and really responded and like learned a lot from that. And it was just a perfect setup to these questions that we're asking, which is just sort of like, okay, realistically, as a community, as a city, like, how can we grow? How do we heal? What do we want? What's our legacy? So he started off with that. And then next, I led the kids in all kinds of art exercises. And this is one specifically where we were practicing collaborating and drawing. So we just had a bunch of pieces of paper out on the ground, and everyone collaborated on, like, jumped around and added to everyone's drawing. So this is an example. This has a bunch of different people in it, but people were just having fun adding, practicing collaboration basically and thinking about these things. And we had really interesting conversations about heroes, and the sort of crux of Sean's education was what does it mean to glorify people? When is it good to glorify people? When can it be problematic to glorify someone? What does it mean to really pedestalize someone? And so we just really talked about that. And these 8th graders are brilliant. They were amazing. I learned a lot from them. They had a lot of really interesting things to say. And we asked this question of who do we want to honor? Who is worth being honored? And what does that mean? And one of the really interesting things that came out of it was that we started talking about murals. And the people who, the kids have grown up in Philly, so they see murals all the time. And they were saying that the murals that feel the most meaningful is when they see regular, familiar faces up on a wall. And we talked about that, like when you're putting someone's face up on the wall, you're immortalizing them. And so it's important to be careful. Just before I started this talk, we were having a conversation about a mural that happened in a neighborhood that the neighborhood didn't want. And it's actually really important to think about that when you put up a mural, you're taking up a lot of space. And so to be really careful with who you are elevating and how you are elevating. And it was really amazing to have this conversation with them because we were just able to really talk about the power of art in that way. And, you know, why it's important to consider these questions. So we were talking about, okay, so who would we want to honor? And people just had really sweet answers. It was a lot of family. It was a lot of friends. It was like familiar faces at the grocery store. It was like a neighbor down the street who has the dog they like. Like these are the people who they thought of when they thought of community heroes. And these are just some pictures of like, you know, some of them are silly, some of them are serious, but like some of the things the kids came up with when they were thinking about community heroes. And it was really amazing. We also wrote down, like they wrote stories about community heroes and like times when they felt like they experienced a community hero doing something. And that was really amazing too, because it was across the board, always not someone famous. You know, it was like a familiar local face. And that was their definition of community heroes. So that was pretty incredible. So yeah, we were coming up with these ideas. We were practicing drawing. And we were like, okay, so moving forward, you know, what's our legacy? In other words, what's our mural? What do we want to symbolize? So these were some of the themes that came up through a lot of conversation. And this is all fully from the 8th graders. Like these themes are fully from them. So we had legacy, theme of time, new beginnings, forgiveness, Jimmy Neutron, because they are 8th graders, warm color, ostriches, flowers and plants, community, and trees. So they were just thinking about, you know, beautiful images immediately. And it was cool. So that was how we ended the first session. And I came back another time and we said, okay, let's take these themes, and we made a mind map from the themes. Basically what we did was we took the themes and then we expanded them, you know, and we got bigger, and we were thinking about legacy. And what's cool about this is that it was so inspiring. Yeah, they came up with all kinds of things. So, you know, the things here that are highlighted in yellow were the things that we ended up deciding we really wanted to move forward with. So the strongest idea is like when we were thinking about community, the random people, like what that means is like the same thing I was talking about before, like local faces, local figures, familiar faces, people that they recognize, people who work at the pharmacy, people who drive their bus, those sort of faces being really elevated. So they came up with the idea of seeds and continuing life that I was talking about at the beginning of this presentation. They liked the idea of elders and children sharing the same image. They were thinking about like seeds and also huge trees that are in bloom. Flowers sprouting, people coming together. So really just like this duality of like birth and elders and birth, like what is young and what is ancient. So that really all came from them. So then I came back with them, and these are just some murals that I was showing them for inspiration. So I said, okay, well, we talked about legacy. Here's some murals that talk about legacy. Here's some murals that talk about forgiveness. Here's some imagery of plants. This was the color scheme that they had said they wanted. So I showed them murals as inspiration. And after that, we took the themes. So then the 8th graders, this was in the spring of last year, 2022. And then in the fall of 2022 with No. This was still it was 2 sets of 8th graders. So then the same 8th graders in the summer of 2022 helped to create this design. So we took those themes that we had created and they started drawing. So these people were working on legacy. These people were working on themes of forgiveness. we had the concept of roots and trees growing, and we just sort of divided them up into groups, and everybody was working on their own idea. We had sun and light was a big thing that came up. And then we took all of our ideas and we started to put them. This took place at the Art Street Meeting House. I don't know if you all have ever been there, but this is in one of their meeting rooms there. So they got to come to the site and see it. We took all of their ideas and we started to compile them into a sort of design. And so this was like, an initial sketch. Obviously, the mural looks nothing like this, but what's cool is that actually a lot of the themes that were created are totally here in this initial collaborative design. The sun, right there in the center, the roots here, there were roots across the entire mural, the flowers, the trees, the people gathering. It was a pretty amazing first sketch. And we talked about it, and we talked about, what they thought about it and what it meant. And then these 8th graders actually graduated. So this was sort of their part of the process, was that they helped with the design. And then they graduated from 8th grade. So then I, over the summer, took their design. So I took this, and then I also talked to Sean, and Sean said, okay, these are great starts to a mural design. We really want to make sure that Quaker revolutionary figures are honored here. So I took this, and then I took Quaker revolutionaries and started to fold them together to make a design. So I'll tell you a little about the people who are featured in the mural, who are Quaker. The first person is Baird Weston. He was a civil rights activist during the middle of the 20th century. He did a lot of really amazing things, but one of his most notable is that he was a really major person in planning the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedoms in 1963. And he talked a lot and was very open about how Quaker faith in his family from his grandmother's side really influenced him. Specifically themes of like community and equality and peace, and how they really gracefully intersected with activism, like Quakerism and activism being really hand in hand. The other person that we have here is Benjamin Lay, who's from quite a bit before. Bayard Rustin was definitely the most contemporary. Everyone else was much earlier. But he was English, and he settled in Philadelphia, and he is known for his really, really dramatic anti-enslavement protests. And he was a really important abolitionist at the time. He was really radical in a lot of ways too. Outside of abolitionism as well, he had a lot of really interesting practices. And he lived in a cave by the Schuylkill River, I believe. I think so. Lucretia Mott, of course, we wanted to feature. She was such an important person in abolition, as well as voting rights and women's rights as well. So we wanted to include her. And then Angelica and Sarah Grimke as well, who similarly were really important advocates and the first nationally known white American advocates for women's right and abolition of enslavement. And then Sarah Mapps Douglas, who felt like one of the most important people to me to honor, because her family was Quaker and she was Quaker, but a big part of her life was advocating for anti-racism within the Quaker community. So for her definitely her mother's entire life, and for a good portion, if not entirety of hers, she talked about how Quaker meeting was segregated. So in the Art Street Meeting House, only white people were allowed in the front hall. And she would talk a lot about how hypocritical that was, and why it was so problematic for an organization that preached about peace and equality to not practice it. And she just did a lot of work in that way. And she has a lot of really interesting letters that are documented where she is like holding Quaker and Art Street Meeting House specifically accountable. And her mother were very devout, and I believe that they went every Sunday to meeting. And I have this picture here because part of the reason it felt important to honor her was because she was a painter. And she has a lot of like documentation of her paintings, and she does really beautiful flowers. And so it felt cool to honor her through painting flowers in this mural as well. So I took the kids' design and I took all of the people that Sean wanted me to honor, and I created this design. I actually did it the old-fashioned way. I painted it. I didn't use Photoshop and so it meant just hand painting it with watercolor. And I sort of cut out a piece of paper that was about the same size as the shipping container. And yeah, I created a little design. So I was like, okay, how can I honor the people who these important ancestral guiding lights, these Quaker revolutionaries, and surround them in youth and the new generation. And like, how can we think about that being like a collaboration, a connection between the young and the old? And this little piece at the top here was that Sean had also asked if we could paint the other side of the shipping container with sunset so that you could see it walking from the other direction. So these are just some close-ups. These two are the Grimke sisters. There's Baird Weston up there. Oh, these pictures don't show very well. But there's Sarah Mapps Douglas, and there's Lucretia Mott and Benjamin Lay behind her. And then this is a photoshopped image. This is my hand-painted design on the wall. So this was like, okay, this is what it's going to look like. So then we just started painting. So this is my assistant, Kate. We had a really amazing group of assistants on this project, and we painted on these large pieces, these large boards, which we then attached to the building. The maintenance and landscapers and build like groundskeepers of Arch Street Meeting House are really, really wonderful people. They helped this entire time. And they helped with building a frame, a wooden frame, to put around the edge of the shipping containers so that we could attach these boards to it. So here we have the beginning process. We started with the sunset, and then we started to fill everything in. These are just some pictures from the painting. It was really fun. I mean, we did it pretty quickly. I really like very vibrant colors, and we really wanted to honor like, oh, and another source of inspiration for this mural was that the famous painting Peaceable Kingdom, and like, which is a famous Quaker painting that has, you know, it's like a very elaborate kingdom portrait with animals and like so many different types of life in it. And so that I was thinking about that lushness in this and how to kind of depict like the wildness and the lushness that is a part of the Quaker belief, you know, peace and about harmony. So here we are. This is when it started to come together. And so we painted all of these in Amber Art Studio. It's in North Philly. So this was us getting started, and we were painting it all together. These trees, the kids came up with the concept of a willow tree. And also, I included the Penn Treaty elm sort of symbolically. I'll show you. I included these dogwood flowers as well, these pink dogwood flowers, because they're Philadelphia native, and I thought that was important. And I also included a lot of marigolds, because marigolds in so many cultures represent grief and death and life at the same time. So I thought that those were really important. So then we brought in these panels to the new 8th grade class. So this was the fall now. This was October of this year. So October of 2022 or September of 2022. And they got to help paint. And that's what's so cool about painting on the panels, is that you can bring them places. So we didn't have to disrupt their day, you know. And they were wonderful, of course. We had so much fun. They did a really, really good job. And yeah, we spent a couple of days painting with them. So it was really cool that the first 8th grade class helped with the design, and the second 8th grade class helped with the creation. And like, they were basically collaborating with each other without even realizing it. So we went to their school. That's where these pictures are taken, and it was really lovely. And then they also came out, and this is the 8th grade class again, and they're painting on the other side of the container. So the other side of the container, rather than painting on boards, we just painted directly on the wall. And that's because it was a very simple sunset, so it felt more manageable. So the 8th graders helped with painting. Again, they did a beautiful job. It was cool for them to come out and see both sets of 8th graders, the class of 2022 and the class of 2021. Class of 2022 and class of 2023. Both sets got to see Arch Street and have a tour of the facilities and learn about Arch Street Meeting House and learn about the history and the legacy of the space. So I think that was really cool too, because they had heard about it in school, but hadn't had the opportunity to come and, see it. And then we had a public community paint day. So these are pictures from our public community paint day. It was open to anyone to come and paint, which was also wonderful to have people out at Arch Street Meeting House. And we filled in this whole sunset. There's Kier at the back. But yeah, it was cool. It happened after meeting one day. So people came out and joined. And we started filling in the sunset really quickly. So then we finished up the painting and we brought out the panels. And as you can see, there's like a wooden frame back there attached to the shipping container. And we attached it. And this is what it became. And it was really amazing. It was like, it felt like an extremely, it was sort of remarkably cohesive, the whole thing. It was really amazing to have the 8th graders involved in every step of the way and to feel really like we collaborated in that way. It was really beautiful to honor so many different parts of Quaker legacy and to honor so many parts of Philadelphia legacy and to just hear about all the different things that people thought and see in this mural when they look at it. Yeah, it was really exciting. So I will now just show you, because Lois mentioned it would be nice to know a little bit about what Amber Art and Design is working on now. So these are just some pictures of what Amber Art is doing now. We are working on a mural that is going up on 5th and Allegheny in North Philly on the side of a rec center called Man Rivera. And the project is about tile. And Linda, who designed the mural, was really interested in tile that's in Caribbean households. So she has Puerto Rican family and was thinking about tile that's in bathrooms and that's in kitchen, and how a lot of the imagery and the tile itself dates back to Spain and was, brought there by colonization. And then from Spain dates back to Morocco. And so thinking about that pathway of colonization and imagery and symbolism and family and all of that. And so she hosted these community days where people came out and helped think about symbols and what their tile would be and what imagery they felt represented them. So it's this really vibrant mural that has all these different, that's sort of supposed to look like tiles, like painted tiles. And we've been working on that since November, and it should go up pretty soon. I think we've got a couple more weeks of painting, and then we're going to install it, which we do by gluing it literally to the wall, which is a really interesting technique that a lot of Philadelphia-based mural artists use. And this was a community paint day we had the other day. These were some kids helping. So it's been really special, and I really value working with them. And yes, I think that is the basics of my presentation. I would love to know if anyone had any questions or thoughts, or if the mural made you think about anything at all.
Where did you learn this? I mean, where did you go to school? Where did this come from? This gorgeous stuff. Yes.
So I have always painted. When I was little, I really loved it. I was lucky to have a public school art teacher who was good. I studied it also in college. I went to Bennington College in Vermont and was able to study some painting there as well. But definitely most of my learning has come from mentors. So I mentored with Precita Eyes Muralists, and they're based in San Francisco. And then Amber Art and Design here in Philadelphia have really taught me everything I know about muralism. Yeah.
Wow. So why did you come to Philadelphia?
This. Yeah, this. I grew up in a small town in Northern California, and I think that I really was hungry for the bigness of the world, and I really wanted to be in a place with a lot of people and a lot of energy. And I had spent a little bit of time in Philadelphia and just had noticed that there was I just met a lot of really warm people, a lot of really warm people. And I think that I had witnessed some really amazing like mutual aid projects and community service projects and public art projects that made me feel like, wow, people are really collaborating there. Like people are working on things together there. And so I came. And I've done plenty of things here that are not related to art as well, just working in service and just sort of existing in the city. But in the past couple of years, I've been able to be more present in painting and in muralism, and that's been really special.
So this is your full-time job now?
It is right now. Yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been in Philadelphia 45 years.
Uh-huh.
During that time, the Mural Arts Project started, and it's incredible how gorgeous it is.
Mm-hmm.
When I first came to Philadelphia 45 years ago, there was trash all over the streets, and people were feeling pretty miserable. And then suddenly, people started painting walls. And it's just gorgeous just to walk around and see all these beautiful murals, and to have one at Arch Street, it's really fabulous.
Thank you so much.
Of course, we do have a lot of walls around Arch Street. I know it's historic and all, but it would be nice to have some murals on the walls.
Well, it's so true. And I will say that's what's so interesting about this project is that there are hardly any murals in Old City, which you may have noticed. There's none. There's really, and the reason why is because, first of all, there's a lot of liability stuff around buildings in Old City because they're old. So it's actually really hard. Like I'm not even sure it's really hard. It might not even be legal because of like building codes. Like it's really hard to get a mural in Old City. As an artist or as someone who wants a mural there. So that was part of why this felt really special, because there's suddenly a mural that's in that area. But yeah, it would be amazing because there are so many huge walls right there.
Yeah. Wow.
You meant there was mention of the Mural Arts Program. So this wasn't done under the Mural Arts Program, but will it be associated with the overall approach to murals that that organization supports, so that it will be part of tours, etc.? Just drop by the Art Street Meeting House.
It's a nice thought. It's actually not. Yeah, the Amber Art and Design is an independent mural company all on their own, so it isn't affiliated. But it would be so cool to put it on the map in some way so that people could come and take a look. I know that I was talking to Sean about also making postcards of it to have like at the front desk when you come into the Art Street Meeting House, so people could like take one on their way out, leaving from meeting. So yeah, it would be cool to figure out how to make it more accessible.
So Amber Arts doesn't actually get commissions from Mural Arts?
No, Amber Art is an entirely separate organization. They collaborate with Mural Arts.
Yeah. Well,
so
who pays for it then?
This mural, as far as I'm concerned, was paid from grant money that was specifically for Arch Street Meeting House doing work that was about asking questions about community and youth and revitalization. So I'm pretty sure that's where that comes from. But generally, every project has a different source. A lot of times it's grants. A lot of times it's people with endowments. Sometimes it's fundraising. It can come from all kinds of different places.
So what will you be doing next after this big project is finished, the one that you're doing at the moment? Do you know?
Not sure.
You see?
Not sure yet. Yes, Amber has a lot of really amazing projects coming up in Philadelphia, and I definitely will help on the ones that I'm able to. And also, yeah, I haven't really been working on my own individual painting process in the past year because I've been doing other mural projects, which is really amazing. But it would be nice to spend some time developing my own painting language as well.
So do you exhibit? Have you had?
I have only had one exhibit, but it was amazing. I exhibited at Casa Mexico, which is a restaurant that is a part of South Philly Barbacoa in South Philly. Yeah, so I had some paintings there, and that was special. Yeah.
Well, we need more exhibits. Yes.
Yes, thank you.
What did you say, Ray?
Don't stop now.
Yes, I appreciate the support. Yeah, I'm curious on what you observed about the mural, or what parts of it were, resonated with any of you, if there was anything that caught your eye about it.
I love the colors. And I'm very interested always in colors more than anything. And it's just so cheerful.
Yeah.
When you look at it and you smile, you can't stop. I mean, it's just wonderful. I mean, a parking lot it's pretty dreary, a parking lot. So, yeah, I just think it's absolutely lovely. Simple as that. Need more. Yes. That's
So glad. That's the point. We wanted to make people happy.
What's interesting to me is you don't have any background in Quakers, do you?
I know. Well, that was I will say that was a really amazing part of the experience, was learning.
Yeah, you did.
I was familiar. I have some friends who are, and I was familiar. But I don't know. I think that Kier thought I was a good fit because I think that I just care a lot about the values that Quaker faith promote. I think that I care a lot about, I resonate with a lot of Quakerism, and that was really special to get to learn about it through the eyes of all the people who were involved in this project, and also to learn about Quakerism through the eyes of the revolutionaries that I was learning about. And to just sort of understand and create a picture. And it felt really right to be sort of it felt like a thank you, the whole mural felt a little bit like a thank you to also the people who taught me a lot about it, and to honor the process of sharing and learning in that way too.
You learned pretty quickly.
Yeah, I did my research.
It's amazing, really. Thank you so much for doing it and spending so much of your life putting together this gorgeous piece of art for us. I mean, it's just fabulous. Yeah.
It was my pleasure, and I'm so grateful to have been able to be a part of this.
Nila, actually, I had another question. I may have missed it, but in the palm of your hand how was that title chosen?
Oh, so it was chosen because one of the images in the mural is hands that are going outward like this and holding a seed. And the eighth graders were the ones that came up with that idea about seeds. They wanted to have seeds and sprouts and then full-grown trees, and sharing the same image, sort of we had these 13-year-olds, and then we had, Lucretia Mott, the concept of what is ancient and what is new, and sharing the same space. So that ended up being my favorite part of the mural, was this one part where her hands are out and there's a sprout growing and growing from her palms. So that was where that came from, was just the idea of birth, and things growing out of very old and ancient places.
That's a very Christian concept too.
That's true. I guess I hadn't thought about that.
Jesus holding us all in the palm of his hand. I think that's what it was. Yeah.
That would make sense. Yeah. Interesting.
So.
I'm curious about the big yellow face.
The sun?
It's got a face on it. I didn't know it was a sun. I thought it might be a person.
Yeah. I really love working with the moon and the sun in my paintings because I feel like it creates like the guardian angel, like the steady force that is observing so much change. So I really wanted to have a very steady, grounded feeling sun that sort of beamed out into the entire mural. And so I was just thinking about sunlight and warmth and steadiness amongst all kinds of change. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much, everybody.